everybody, welcome to Julia at Home. Today I'm going to be giving you an overview of some of the most common homeschooling methods, and in case you want to learn more about them, I will give you a few resources for each. Hi, I'm Julia. I'm a homeschooling mom to a first grader, a 4-year-old preschooler, and a baby who is now 8 months old. I love to research. I actually went to law school and I consider researching one of my superpowers. So of course I have done a lot of research and continue to do research in my homeschooling journey with my own children. And today I wanted to use my researching skills to share with you some of the homeschooling methods to get you started. In this video, my goal is to give you an overview of the most common homeschooling methods, and I have a few bonus ideas that I threw in at the end as well. And to give you just a couple of resources for each. So if a method or more than one appeals to you, then you can learn a little bit more about it. Of course, there's much more to learn on each method. I am not an expert. I may do a little bit more of a deep dive into some of the methods that I'm more interested in other videos, but this one I'm really just trying to keep it brief and give you the basic information. The first method that I'm going to talk about is unschooling. So the philosophy behind unschooling is that children learn naturally, that they don't need to be taught. So a parent's role in unschooling is to set up an environment for the child that's conducive to learning and to facilitate or guide their learning. So this could look like strewing certain books, making sure they have resources to learn what they want to learn, maybe for older kids connecting them to some mentors in the community. Because of the nature of unschooling, it's going to look drastically different in each home and with each child. So therefore the resources you're going to use are going to look much different. But one resource that I've heard mentioned several times are books by John Holt. The one I've heard mentioned most often is How Children Learn. So I'm going to link that below in case you're interested in reading it and you want to check out more about this method. The second method I'm going to talk about is Waldorf education. Now, this was created by Rudolf Steiner in the 1920s, and I believe he was German. This method is known for delaying academics. I believe they don't start reading and writing until the child is around 8. But like many of these methods, you're following the individual child. And so their preschool and kindergarten looks very play, imagination driven, lots of arts and very gentle childhood. As the students move into the grade school years, Waldorf integrates a lot of storytelling, art, and movement into the academics. Another distinction about the Waldorf method is that they use main lesson blocks. So instead of like a traditional school model where you're going to this subject for 45 minutes and this subject for 45 minutes and this subject for 45 minutes, they will have a main lesson block that they will do for several weeks. I don't know how many during the year. Let's say they're going to dive into ancient Egypt like we just did. They will have a main lesson block and they will focus on that for a couple hours each morning, and they will come out of it with a main lesson book where they are drawing and writing down what they have learned from their teacher and their studies in that day in their main lesson block. And so they come out of it with this main lesson book that has been beautifully designed by themselves. A couple resources I'm going to suggest if you think you might be interested in the Waldorf method. The first is a book, You Are Your Child's First Teacher, and that's if you have young kids and you're interested in this. I read this when my daughter was a baby. I think I read it on a Nook, so I don't have a physical copy to show you, but I will have it linked below. If you're at all interested in this kind of education, or maybe just interested in the idea of incorporating more storytelling and art into the preschool years and kind of a gentle childhood, then I recommend reading it. You don't even have to follow Waldorf the whole way up. I would also check out waldorfeducation.org. It will be linked below. It has a lot of information. And then if you just want to check out some YouTube channels, I would recommend Sundays with Sarah. Sarah is the current owner of Bella Luna Toys, and she does videos on Waldorf education and things related to Waldorf. And she's really calming to watch, so I enjoy watching her videos, and I especially recommend her if you have the younger children. And then if you do have the older children, I would recommend checking out Pepper and Pine's YouTube channel if you haven't already. She has a bunch of she homeschools her children, and I believe her youngest is, I want to say, in 2nd or 3rd grade now, but she has several sons that she has taught, she has homeschooled. and I believe mostly using the Waldorf method. And so she has several videos on art and stories and crafts you can do, as well as just some of the resources that she's used for main lesson blocks. And her resource videos are incredible. So I highly recommend you check them out if that's something you're interested in. Next is Montessori, and this is a method based on the work of Maria Montessori, who was an Italian scientist in the early 1900s. She identified sensitive periods for things like sensory input and language and numbers and math that were ranges. So it's not that a child turns 4 and they're suddenly ready for this. It's a combination of the child will probably be ready for this developmentally around this age, but we always follow the child. So some of the hallmarks of Montessori are very hands-on tactile materials. Marie Montessori herself created materials to help children explore their world sensorially. So things like the pink tower and touch boards and sound cylinders all were things to help them hone in their senses. So Montessori is very known for these hands-on tactile materials for things like sensorial, as well as things like math. She has wonderful math materials with beads that can really teach abstract concepts in a more concrete way for young children. Another hallmark of Montessori is that it is self-directed. So the child is in a classroom and they are, of course, presented with presentations and materials that fit their developmental level, and the Montessori teacher is called a guide because they are guiding them. But then the child is given freedom to be self-directed within the classroom and choose which materials, which work they're going to choose at that time. So that maybe a child is really interested in math that day and they can sit and do however many math problems they want with the materials that are within their level. For the younger years, there's also a focus on autonomy, self-reliance, and independence. And so practically what that looks like is creating an environment for the child where they can do as much as they can by themselves. It includes providing small tools for them, maybe small glasses and silverware, providing stools if there's not sinks that are low enough for them to reach. And these are all things that can be done within the home quite easily under the Montessori method. So if Montessori is something that you might be interested in, if you have a younger child, I recommend this book. It's How to Raise an Amazing Child the Montessori Way by Tim Selden, and I will have it linked below. It's just a good starting point. If you want to read one of Marie Montessori's books, I recommend starting with The Absorbent Mind. That seems to be the most accessible. It's the one that I read. A lot of her books can be really dense. So if you're not, really into the method, I would ease yourself in. I also recommend you check out the website Info Montessori. It has the presentations or lessons plans, as traditional teachers would call them. And so you can look at that and see if that's something you might be interested in doing with your child. I will make another video on more resources. There's a lot of Montessori resources out there. I have to kind of make myself not share all of them at once so you're not overwhelmed. That's where I would start, and then you can dive in more later. I am also going to link to the YouTube channel Hapa Family because I think she has a wonderful channel that focuses on Montessori, and if you have younger children, that's something you're interested in, I would look at that. I don't have a great suggestion for older children in Montessori right now, so if you know something, please link it in the comments below, and that would be great. The fourth method I'm talking about today is classical. This is a really rigorous education. The idea behind it is training the mind within the developmental stages. So in classical, there are 3 stages. The elementary level kids are in the grammar stage. So the idea is that they are sponges and they are ready to absorb a lot of information. So you're going to give them as much information as you can at that age. They're going to learn a lot of dates and events and people in history. They're going to work on memorization, maybe poetry. They're going to learn their math facts. They are going to learn basic grammar, probably more in the upper elementary years. This is going to form a really solid foundation as they move forward into the next phase, which is the logic phase. And this is where they're really questioning everything and they want to know why. So the facts kind of take a back seat at this point, and they are learning how to question, how to think through things, and logic. And logic is actually a subject that you will teach your child in classical education. From there, once they reach the high school years, they're in the third phase, which is rhetoric, and that's where you put this together. So you take the facts, the foundation that they've gotten in the grammar stage, you take the logic, the why, and the reasoning that they've been working on in the logic stage in middle school, and you put them together so that they can use the facts that they have to make logical rhetorical arguments. And at this point, they're also more ready to dive into maybe some primary sources and make arguments from there. One aspect of classical education that you may have heard me mention is the history sequence. So they go chronologically, traditionally in 4-year sequences, so that the child is going through all of history in each phase. So they'd go through 4 years in the grammar phase, then 4 years in logic phase, and 4 years in the rhetoric phase. That is generally how it's set up. Another thing I want to mention with classical is the great conversation, especially once they're into the rhetoric phase and ready to read primary sources and great books. The idea is that they are engaging in a conversation with great minds throughout history. So they are reading classic works and engaging with them and discussing them with you, hopefully, and maybe some peers, so that they become part of what is called the great conversation. So really, the absolutely best resource for this is The Well-Trained Mind by Susan Weisbauer and Jessie Wise. If you're going to homeschool and this appeals to you even in the slightest bit, whether it's a method you want to go all in on, or maybe you're just interested in parts of it, I would recommend reading this book. Often libraries have it. I think this is the 3rd edition, so I think they might have come out with a new one since I've gotten this one. This is chock full of information, both the theory behind things and also just a lot of practical education suggestions. So I highly recommend this. Next is Charlotte Mason. If you've watched my videos before, you know that Montessori and Charlotte Mason are the methods that most appeal to me currently. And Charlotte Mason actually kind of came out of a classical style and adapted it a bit. So Charlotte Mason herself was an educator in the early 1900s in England. She believed that education was atmosphere, discipline, and life. So what this means is atmosphere. Children are shaped by their atmosphere, which is their environment around them. You want them to have a lovely environment, back to the environment that's set up for learning, which we talked about even with unschooling, but also Montessori and Waldorf are both very interested in setting up an environment for the children as well. But also the teachers and parents and their actions and behaviors are also part of this atmosphere that you're creating in your homeschool environment that affects your children. Education is discipline. So she was very interested in character training, especially in the younger years. She believed that teaching the children good habits would carry forth into the rest of their childhood and their adult years, and was setting them up for a good life. And in that, the parents also have to be disciplined in disciplining and teaching their children. And my favorite part, education is life. So she was really interested in a living education. So this includes lots of living books, which are not dry, not just stating the facts, but stories with facts woven in that would bring this subject matter to life for children and spark their imaginations and their curiosity. She was very interested in nature study and spending time outdoors in nature. I think she says that you should spend a minimum of 4 hours outdoors in nature every day, which is a wonderful goal that I rarely meet, unfortunately. But that really gives you that hands-on and observational education, a living education. And she would do nature journaling along with that. Learning about art and music and stories, these were all part of a living education for Charlotte Mason. Practically, in addition to reading lots of living books and spending lots of time outside, the Charlotte Mason method ends up being many subjects. So she talks about spreading a feast, and each child will take what they will. So you spread a feast and end up having short lessons of many lessons throughout a day, which looks a lot different than the Montessori method of allowing children to self-direct what they are learning and diving in for long periods of time if they're interested. If the Charlotte Mason method is something that you're interested in and want to learn more about, the first book I would recommend is the Charlotte Mason Companion by Karen Andriola. There are many books, and in fact, Charlotte Mason wrote a series of books as well. But I think if you just want an idea to get started, this is a good place to start. It goes through many of the different aspects of a Charlotte Mason education in a really understandable way with practical ideas. So this is where I would start, and I will do another video with more resources on Charlotte Mason. If you are interested in looking online, I would check out Simply Charlotte Mason as well as Ambleside Online. Both of them have, Ambleside Online actually has free curriculum that you can look at, and Simply Charlotte Mason has paid products as well as just a lot of information on their site to help you dive in and learn more about who Charlotte Mason was, what her method looks like. Next, I want to talk about Brave Writer. Julie Bogart is living today. This is not somebody from the early 1900s. And she homeschooled her 5 children who are now awesome adults. And she created the Brave Writer program is actually a writing program. So she has products for teaching writing, both creative and mechanics and all that. And she is inspired by Charlotte Mason, as well as I think she has some unschooling tendencies. Some families have taken her ideas and created what is called a Brave Writer lifestyle. It's kind of Charlotte Mason and unschooling inspired, with a focus on enchantment and a love of learning and connection with your children. And it is very language rich, as she comes from a writing background, and that's what her products are. The Brave Writer lifestyle will incorporate Brave Writer ideas such as poetry teas, copywork and dictation, art and music appreciation, nature days, free writing, and more. Some families choose to make certain days themed or do certain subjects on certain days. If Brave Writer is something that you think you might be more interested in, I would first actually check out the Brave Writer website. There's a lot of good information on there, and there's a blog. So look at that. And then I would also recommend picking up the Brave Learner. This just came out in 2019. I'm actually almost through the whole thing. It's taking me a while because I'm actually taking notes as I go. Another homeschool style is just traditional, or what you would call school at home. So this is going to look like what you would imagine. Some families choose to do the traditional textbook style curriculums and workbooks and worksheets. And if that works for you, that's great. Some even have their kids sit at desks. Or maybe they do a traditional school schedule with blocks of time for different lessons. So that's something that you can be open to as well. There's so many curriculum choices for homeschoolers now, so you have a lot of options. Within that, I also want to mention online or virtual school. There's more and more programs coming out for online or virtual school where you can do one subject. There's schools where you can do the whole thing online if that's something that will work, that you think would work for your family. There's also individual classes. Brave Writer, which I was just talking about, has online writing workshops for families as well as for individual children. And of course, if you have older children, high school level, they could take online courses. I know here where we live, there's the option for high schoolers, whether they are in the public school system or homeschooled, to take state college courses either in person or online their junior and senior years. That would be more of a traditional school option. One style that I just also want to mention is eclectic, because if you ask most homeschoolers, they will tell you they're eclectic. And basically what that means is that they are taking things from different methods that they've seen and combining it and making their own style. And that is part of the wondrous beauty of homeschooling, is that you don't have to be a purist if you don't want to be, and you can really do what works for you and your family. You could even do a different style with each child depending on what they need. Thank you so much if you made it this far in the video. I have a few bonus ideas for you that I hesitate to call full methods, but are definitely things you can incorporate into your homeschool. So the first I want to mention is unit studies. Some families do unit studies that incorporate everything. So when I'm posting my unit studies videos, I'm really focusing on just that subject. So I'm focusing on learning history or learning science, and I do incorporate some art and projects with it. But what some families do is take a unit study, like say they're going to study something like astronomy, and they will incorporate astronomy into their math, into their language, maybe their reading, their writing. if they're Montessori, maybe their sensorial and practical life activities. So really that unit becomes what they're focusing on in all of their school. And so some families have a lot of fun with that. I'm going to link to the YouTube channel, The Waldorf Way, below, because she does a lot of unit studies. So you can check her out if you're more interested in some of those. And the last thing I'm going to mention is Gameschooling. So I actually love using games in my homeschool, and I believe this term was coined by My Little Poppies. She has a blog. I don't think she has a YouTube channel, but I will link to her blog below. And she uses games in her homeschool where they'll just get a stack of games out. And there are so many fantastic games you can play with kids. Some of them are clearly educational and fun, and some of them are just so fun that the kids don't even realize that they're educational. You can find games for almost every subject, and she actually has on her website posts where she has lists of games by subject. So you could make that your curriculum, or you could do as I do and just incorporate it into your other curriculum. Every homeschool family is different, but these are the most common methods that you hear homeschoolers talk about. And now hopefully you know a little bit more about them. As always, I'd be happy to answer any questions you have. Please leave them in the comments. Make sure you hit that like button and subscribe below, and I will talk to you later.